One.
Happy Easter, everyone. This is Alice speaking from my safe and secure home. I am going to read you the Lenten service today by James Dillett Freeman. It's called The One We All Might Be, Part 2. There was one who showed us all what we all might be, what height of fulfillment, what depth of compassion, what breadth of understanding might be ours if we were all that we might be. Ours to love with a love that excludes none but gives himself to all. To have a sense of right values, placing spiritual things first, yet using spiritual powers to transform the physical world. To be master of self and superior to circumstance. To be humble of spirit, yet conscious of internal worth. To be at peace, yet to be a center of energy. To be God-centered, a focus through which his power flows freely in joyous achievement. To be unlimited in vision and to attain what we envision. To experience the fullness of compassion, yet to live to the fullness of joy. To be able to help all who turn to us to bless the lives we touch, to turn sorrow into joy, hate into love, sickness into health, lack into fulfillment, death into life. To be one with the essential harmony at the center of all things. This is what we all might be. And have a happy Easter, everybody.
So now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker for today, our very own Timothy West. He is an incredible Renaissance man, friend, teacher, and a good, outstanding member of our spiritual community.
Thank you, Eva, for that wonderful introduction. I truly appreciate all that you've said and all that you've done for us today. And also you too, Bill, for being our man behind the scenes with all your technical support. It's truly a blessing. I'd also like to thank Alice and Pat and everyone else that had anything to do with how we made it here today. Welcome to Easter morning on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you have tuned in from. It's true that the house of God does have many rooms. My name is Tim West, and I'm one of your Unity in the Olympics prayer chaplains. It is my honor to be your guest speaker today for this beautiful Easter Sunday 2020. As you can tell by the world around us, that it just doesn't appear to be like any Easter that we've ever known or have ever experienced before. From the mask that we are now wearing to the fear that's on our face, you would think it's more like Halloween. Time is shifting as anticipated upcoming activities become dreams of the future, such as weddings and reunions, and other events are canceled altogether, such as high school and college graduations. Any of those celebrations that are here for 2020 seems to be something that is from times gone by. With all the sheltering in place and the social distancing, it looks like Easter Bunny didn't even make it out of the box. It just doesn't feel right, does it? You know, when we look back on this day here and now, this day in 2020, I wonder what our hindsight will be. Will we remember and reminisce about how we stayed in and stayed prayed in? Will we tell stories of people hanging out of the windows singing to each other in Italy? Or will we reflect on the quality time spent with your granddaughter when you learned how to FaceTime for the first time? Or will you remember the time you spent in the silence holding weeds while connecting with the divine as you gently whispered across the fences to your neighbors? Making way for love to grow, realizing the awareness that we truly are one and have that desire and need to be one at this moment. Or will we be singing the tragic parody of isolation and all those chants that I've been hearing of no Perel? The house of God does have many rooms. In which room will we turn our light on? The stories of our plights, the struggles, the victories that we tell are all part of who we are in the connection with one another and our perception thereof. They offer perspective and insight on the way we see ourselves and the world. I have a favorite story to tell about my daughter Madison and her first Easter, where she was questioning if there really was an Easter bunny. Every time I tell the story, I feel good about it, and it brings a really big smile to my face. The other day, I decided to write the story on a piece of paper and stick it inside an egg. The egg was then placed inside a box with some other Easter items, and I sent it back to her with all those scrapbooks that I made for her from when she was 4. A few days later, she called me to thank me for the gift. It seemed that that gift was the perfect break from her boredom from being in the isolation. Then Madison said, somehow we remember that story a little bit differently each time that we tell it, especially as we get older. It's as if each time the story is told, it is told from a different perspective. You know, I love Easter and the way it brings forward great memories. A family sitting around the table telling stories, each one reflecting back and recalling something different. I loved the story that I was told about the resurrection as it appears in the Gospels. It is as if looking at the life of Jesus the Christ from several different perspectives, such as, for instance, in the book of Matthew. It states, after the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from the heaven and, going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His importance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead. The angel said to the women, do not be afraid, for I have told that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen. Just as he said, come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you. So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. Greetings, he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me. While the women were there on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. When the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, you are to say, his disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep. If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble. So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed, and the story has been widely circulated among the Jews this very day. ... And then there's that passage in Luke, and it adds a little bit more dimension and depth into this witnessing that's occurred. And on this first day of the week, very early in the morning, the woman took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, he has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee? The Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of sinners, be crucified, and on that 3rd day be raised again. Then they remembered his words. When they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. But they did not believe the women because their words seemed to be like nonsense. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away, wondering to himself what had happened. And then there's that part about the road to Emmaus. Now, that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talk and discuss these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. But they were kept from recognizing him, as if something had changed. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the 3rd day since all this took place." In addition, some of the women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but they did not find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of the companions went to the tomb and found it was just as the woman had said, but they did not see Jesus. He said to them, though, "How foolish you are, and how slow to believe that all of the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer those things and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them that what was said in the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village in which they were going, Jesus continued on if he was going farther. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over." So went in to stay with them. So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, "It is true. The Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the two told that what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. So Jesus appears to the disciples? While they were still talking about him, Jesus stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with them." They were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you troubled, and why do your doubts rise in your minds? Look at my hands and my feet. Is it not I myself? Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have." And he said this. He showed them his hands and his feet. And while they still did not believe it because of joy and amazement, he asked them, "Do you have anything here to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence. He said to them, "This is what I told you while I was still with you. Everything must be fulfilled that is written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms. And most notable of all the Bible scriptures about the resurrection is that of John. And it says, early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. She ran and found Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one that Jesus loved, and she said, "They have taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. They were both running, but other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He stopped and looked in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter arrived and went inside. He also noticed the linen wrappings lying there, while the cloth had covered Jesus' head was folded up and lying apart from the other wrappings. Then the disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. For unto then they still hadn't understood the scriptures that said Jesus must rise from the dead. Then they went home. But Jesus appears to Mary Magdalene. Mary was standing outside the tomb crying, and as she wept, she stood up and looked in. She saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. "Dear women, why are you crying?" the angels asked her. "Because they had taken away my Lord," she replied, "and I don't know where they have put him." "Because they have taken away my Lord," she replied, "and I don't know where they put him." She turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" Jesus asked her. "Who are you looking for?" She thought it was the gardener. "Sir," she said, "if you have taken him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will go and get him." "Mary," Jesus said. She turned to him and cried out, "Rabboni," which is Hebrew for teacher. "Don't cling to me," Jesus said, "for I haven't yet ascended to the Father. But go find my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene found the disciples and told them, "I've seen the Lord." Then she gave them his message. That Sunday evening, the disciples were meeting behind locked doors because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders. Suddenly, Jesus was standing there among them. "Peace be with you," he said as he spoke. He showed them the wounds in his hands and his side. They were filled with joy and they saw the Lord. Again he said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I am sending you." Then he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, they are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven." And then Jesus appeared to Thomas, one of the 12 disciples. Thomas, nicknamed the twin, or doubting Thomas, from the valley of the shadow of doubt, I say, was not with the others when Jesus came. They told him, "We have seen the Lord." Now, these are all witnessing that happened in Matthew, Luke, and John. But the interesting thing is they're all very, 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 very similar, except each one having a different perspective and a little bit more depth. Until you get to that of Mark. Mark has the same beginning, paraphrased, but it never mentions the resurrection. It never mentions that on the other side. It never mentions the dialogues with the two as they approached Emmaus. It never mentions being seen again in its original writing. It only goes up to Mark 16:8 and ends. But then later, as you find more Bibles that were printed and more words that came out and more stories that were told, two different endings were added on to the end. And you get to choose how the story goes. Just like in the times now, we think that everything is closed down, isolated, out of sight, out of mind. And yet the Spirit of God is still alive. You know, we used to have a thing when we were a little kid that we used to say, and it would be, this is the church. No, wait a minute. Let's do this right. Here is the church. Here is the steeple. Open the door and see all the people. Well, it's kind of like the same thing now. This is the church. You are the people. We've opened the door. It has no steeple, but you still get to figure out how the story ends. See, I like the version in Mark the best because Mark represents substance idea in the overcomer and is very, very, very useful in ministering to our spiritual faculties in the redeeming work throughout our being. Mark represents shining's God gift of love through us as us. For you can overcome all things and shine on God's love. The choice is yours. So when we go forth and tell stories of the here and the now and the past and our future, remember that God has been with us all along. It just may not look like he is. It is. But the divine is always with us. So let us be glad and rejoice in the love that Christ's light, that Christ's love is still alive in us. I still choose to believe all the stories. Now let's take these words into a time of meditation. And whether we walk down a path and we see that which is God and walk on, or that where we walk down that path and see God in all things, we are grateful. We are very, very grateful for all things. So let's ease back into that time of silence, holding all the thoughts that we don't. And allowing our love to flow this Easter. For Christ is risen in us. Gee, this is us. And as we get through this, we celebrate. We celebrate this knowing, this wisdom, and this truth. Thank you, sweet Spirit. Thank you, thank you, thank you for this understanding. Thank you for joining us here today. As a special treat, I have Chaplain Pat Coughlin Mawson with a poem about out of darkness into light. Take it away, Pat.
Hi, I'm Pat Coughlin Mawson, and I'm one of the chaplains at Unity Olympics, and I'd like to share with you an Easter poem. Easter 2020. This Easter will be different as we rise again, not seeing all our loved ones, away from our dear friends. The table will be set for two, but prayers remain the same, creating a new story, stating all the names of people all around the world. Our vision will be clear. Our gratitude is endless, but may include some tears of regrets and losses for changes that we see. But out of darkness comes the light right inside of me. So be it.
So now's the time for blessing our love offerings. And even though we are not in the physical space here together, I would like us to say this prayer because it is so powerful, blessing all our offerings and tithes. So hold the gift that you are about to give, either physically or online, close to your heart, and say the following with me. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, and I give in love. So since this is a virtual service, you may also want to give virtually by going online into our website, www.unityintheolympics.org. And we also urge you to let us know if you have any requests for prayers. Send them in to us or call them in, and we will pray over them because our chaplains are continuing with the prayer ministry. So keep in touch with us as we keep you in our hearts and our prayers. So let us say together the prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. The health of God flows through us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is truly well.